How about now? There we go. Good afternoon. Again, thank you for coming to the workshop. My name is Louis Salai. I'm the Deputy City Manager here in Agoura Hills. And I'm also here with our solid waste consultant, Kim Nielsen, who assisted us with developing this ordinance, as well as Mayor Elise Buckley-Weber, who also served on our environmental subcommittee, who actually was involved in a lot of this process when we were developing. And then we have our council member, Penny, blanking here. Penny Sylvester, thank you. So again, thank you for coming out. The goal this afternoon is to kind of talk about the proposed ordinance. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead, Kim. So just to kind of do a little bit of an outline, we're going to go through kind of the purpose of the ordinance. We'll talk about the elements of the proposed ordinance as it relates to reusable foodware and the compliant non-reusable foodware. We'll talk about examples of compliant non-reusable foodware and accessories. We'll show you some examples. And then we'll talk about the implementation schedule that we've established. And then, of course, we'll talk with questions. Next. So let's talk about the purpose. So I think a lot of general public and people will agree that there's numerous studies and reports about the negative impacts that plastics and expanded polystyrene have on the environment as it relates to in our litter system, the problems it creates at local landfills, as well as the pollution in the creeks, and of course the greenhouse gas emissions that come from the plastics production. Because of that, several existing state legislation that's limiting or prohibiting the use of single-use plastics. I think the most recent one now is the legislature is getting ready to sign the one that is now the last single-use plastic bag. They're talking about that's going to go away, just again, once again, tied to the negative impacts that plastics has. This ordinance has been in discussion with the current subcommittee as well as past council subcommittees for several years. It's something we've been talking about. A lot of it had to do with timing. When was the best time to do it? We were talking about it during COVID, but then obviously when COVID came, we didn't want to bring this out. So once everything kind of settled down, we decided this was the time. Also, over 100 plus current municipalities have passed similar legislation that either limits or prohibits this type of plastics. And then also in the city's current climate action and adaptation plan, it's listed as a goal. It's one of the goals that's listed in our CAP as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through managing the solid waste generation. So it's something as the reason why we're pursuing this at this time. Next. So let's talk about the ordinance elements. This is kind of just a quick review. The elements consist of definitions, which is standard in most of our ordinances. There's regulations on dine-in foodware for on-site consumption. There's also regulations for takeout foodware for off-site consumption. There's regulations for those companies that use a digital ordering platform as part of their business. And as with any regulation, what's applicable to our businesses is also applicable to the cities. So we have our own regulations that we will have to do to the extent of the purchasing our own facilities and city-sponsored events. As with anything, there are exemptions to this code, as well as standard enforcement and penalties. Next. So before I get into the ordinance elements, I just want to talk about the food vendor definition. As you can see, it's a very, very long definition. A lot of this is based on the health and safety code section that you see there. It refers to restaurants, grocery stores, delicatessens, food service establishments, any business in essence that serves or sells food or beverage. So it's not just targeted at restaurants. We wanted to be very clear. It's just anyone that serves food. This is applicable to any gas station that may serve a hot dog or sells a Slurpee. This regulation will comply to every type of definition of a food vendor. Next. So let's talk about the ordinance elements. Obviously, the first thing is this regulation will require a food vendor who is selling or providing food to use a reusable foodware or reusable utensil. They can use other non-compliant reusable foodware accessories made of natural fibers, such as your napkins that you see that are kind of brown in color, their food waste wrappers, straws such as the bamboo straws and some of the examples that we have up here. You'll also have to offer condiments in reusable containers. So that means no longer handing someone a ketchup packet you'll have to give it in a reusable container. And the ordinance also prohibits the distribution of foodware or foodware accessories made of polystyrene foam. So EPS now will be completely prohibited in the city limits. Next. With respects to off-site food consumption, same thing. Food vendors will be required to provide takeout food in reusable foodware or compliant non-reusable foodware items such as like containers, things that aren't made of polystyrene. They'll also have to provide other non-compliant reusable foodware accessories made of, again, the natural fibers, some of the examples that you see here on this table we talked about earlier. And we'll talk about some of that later in the presentation. It's going to require use of takeout bags made of any type of paper, natural fiber, or some reusable material. And we kept reusable kind of open to allow the businesses to be creative. So as long as it's not polystyrene, it's not a plastic, if you come up with something and who knows, down the road, you might have a manufacturer that might come up with something and that'll be something that'll be allowed. And again, it will once again prohibit any food vendor, restaurant, business of providing polystyrene or any type of plastic going out of the business. Next. If a business is using a digital platform, the DOP will be required to have a statement in it that says non-compliant or compliant non-reusable foodware and foodware accessories basically can only be offered upon request. So you won't be automatically handing it out, they'll have to request it. And also, if you're using a third-party digital ordering platform, the food vendor shall customize its menu with a list of available, compliant, non-reusable foodware items and foodware accessories, which means you won't be able to have like the polystyrene foam there, anything plastic. It'll have to be something similar to the natural fiber. So if that menu says, oh, you can pick and choose, it's gonna have to be something that's non-plastic. Next. With respects to this ordinance, it also applies to city facilities. We will be required to do the exact same thing. We're going to have to use reusable foodware or foodware accessories. Anything that's happening at our events, at city facilities, we're basically being held to the same standard. We're not going to make an exception. Next. There are exemptions in the code, and this has to be as established from the Health and Safety Code. The Health and Safety Code gives exemptions to food vendors, that definition we saw earlier, to healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, public and private school cafeterias, and it also provides an exemption in the event that there's an emergency. Let's say we have a disaster or a major event where if we're bringing in items and the only thing available is polystyrene or plastic, there would be an exemption to be able to use at that time. But other than that, those are the only exemptions in this ordinance. Next. Like any of our ordinances, there is an enforcement period. Technically, the ordinance goes into effect 30 days after it's adopted. So that would be if we are having the first reading scheduled for November and we have the adoption in December, technically the ordinance would go into effect in January of 2025. But in our discussions with the subcommittee and staff as well, the subcommittee is recommending a 1-year exemption or a 1-year grace period for businesses to utilize any of the remaining supplies. And with anything, if after that year, once we start in January 2026, we start doing enforcement, it'll start more like a notice of violation, a written notice. It'll be a first offense, a second offense, and then obviously if there's a third offense and any subsequent, there's a penalty, and you see the penalties there. It's basically considered an infraction in the municipal code, which is $25 per day, not to exceed 300, and the city could issue what's called administrative citation. But to let you know, I've been with the city almost 20 years. I know our current council was passed. If we have a violator, we're gonna work with you as best we can. We're gonna do what we can, but at the same time, we want our businesses to know that, if you decide that you're not gonna comply, we're gonna use the tools that we have necessary to get compliance. But at the same time, we also want the businesses to know, like, even though we're giving you a grace period after that year, if we walk in and we see just blatant violations, like if I happen to be somewhere and I go to somewhere to have lunch and I see that it's been over a year and a business is into it, we're gonna try to come and get people to comply. We're hoping our businesses will help us kind of move towards that road towards sustainability. Next. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some examples of what we call compliant non-reusable foodware or foodware accessories. So here are some examples. These are some of the things that are available. Like I said, you can kind of Google, compostable cups, compostable straws, and you'll get samples such as these reusable straws, which are kind of made of the metal you see there, the bamboo. I think we have a poster here that talks about, where's the straws? A kind of a sugar version of a straw, single-use stirrers. These are just examples. There are a lot of examples, and there are a lot of products that are out there, and our goal will be to help you, kind of give you the information that businesses need so you can purchase the right and compliant foodware. Next. So let's talk about implementation. So here's the implementation schedule that city staff will be recommending to the council at the first meeting. So today we're having our workshop. This workshop is being recorded, and after this we will put this out to the businesses that weren't able to attend so they can at least listen to it. So right now, as of tomorrow through November 4th, staff will be finalizing the ordinance and getting it prepared for a first reading, which is scheduled to be an introduction and first reading at our November 13th City Council meeting. After that, the second reading and adoption will be on December the 11th, and the ordinance goes effective on January 11th, 2025. So that's the first year the ordinance now technically is in effect. So technically enforcement would start on that 11th day of 2025 if the council doesn't grant the grace period, but staff will be recommending, and then the subcommittee will also be recommending that the council consider a grace period. So if the grace period is approved, then the implementation, which means i.e. enforcement, would not start until January 11th of 2026, giving the businesses a year. Next. So that concludes the presentation. I'm available for any questions. Our consultants, a member of our subcommittees here. So if there are any questions, I will take them at this time. Sure, I'm going to give him the mic.
We don't have too many options for different sizes.
I did see, I was kind of looking at that. There are a couple companies that offer sizes. I will agree with you. I did see like a small and kind of a large. I didn't see a medium. Our hope is that the producers will begin to kind of create different varieties. I know I was talking to a representative from one of the waste companies and the people that do the processing of the trash and the recyclables. And they advised us that they have people that are currently working with the state of California, which is Cal Recycle. They're the kind of division of California that oversees all the solid waste and recycling in California, and the ones that implement many of the regulations that we have to adopt. They have working groups where they're trying to work with that in the plastics industry to come up with products that the processors can process and ensure that they get recycled or compostable. So that's something that's a work in progress. It's ongoing. So we're hoping, and the way the ordinance reads is any type of accessory in the future that becomes eligible, it automatically gets included. So we're hopeful that we'll start to see more varieties. Just right now, in talking to the haulers and the processors, is you have people, while they have machines that separate, there are still people that are looking and taking things out of the waste stream. And if something doesn't look like it's recyclable, they're going to pull it. And a lot of the kind of the plastic cups, like the one you said, that those are the ones that automatically get pulled because they know they're not going to be compostable. They may get recycled, and they automatically pull those, and those get landfilled. So our recommendation is if you're buying products in the future, buy the compostable products that are made of paper or natural fiber, because that's easy. The person looks at it and goes, that's not clear, and they take it out. So. But yes, I will agree. There are, I did see some, there are some, but our goal will be as staff is we're going to create a web page that our businesses can go to. We're going to put education pieces on there and hopefully find companies that we can give links to that our businesses can go and purchase products from. And again, it's not an endorsement. It's a way to just kind of help you get to the things you need. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
What is happening on the state level? I've heard a little bit about Senate Bill 54.
Unfortunately, I haven't read 54, but what I've heard is that, like we talked, the single-use plastic, that bag that everyone's seen in the market, that is supposed to go away. they're going to be passing, but I have not read 54 yet in its entirety. You aware, Kim, 54?
Cal Recycle sent out an email today that they are still taking public comment on 54. So it is the thicker plastic bags that they're trying to eliminate, but it's not finalized yet. So they're still taking comment and there will be revisions.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is on Senate Bill 54, it passed several years ago, was signed by the governor, but they're still working on how they're going to get producers to, to produce these products without plastics. And so ultimately, if everything gets worked out, it's my understanding that at some point in the state, we'll be making the same products mandatory, that there will be no more plastics. Is that your understanding?
That is our understanding, and that's a discussion that I was having with one of our waste management representatives about this task group that's working with the Cal Recycle folks and the people in the plastic industry to come up with something that will ultimately not have plastic in it, that they'll be able to process. So I was told that's a working group that's they're constantly up in Sacramento with Cal Recycle in these groups. So they're, at least the legislators are bringing in the right people, because at the end, those are the people that are processing it. You and I are the people that are trying to understand, okay, what goes in what can, is this truly recyclable? So they're trying to come up with, working with the plastics industry to come up with something that's truly plastic free. So again, it was passed. It's one of those that was passed, but there wasn't any forethought of, again, talking to the people that are, I call the end users, the people that have to go through and process everything. That's where you kind of learn where some of the challenges are, because even though you go through this, there are mechanisms that you put in a human factor and he can't figure out, or he or she can't figure out, is it or is it not, then they're taught, then let it go to the waste stream, let it go to the landfill, and that's what they're trying to avoid. So that concludes our workshop today. Like I said, this is being recorded, and we will post this on our website as well as on our YouTube channel, and then we'll send out a link to the business list that we sent the notices about, so they can at least look at the website, or they can look at the presentation online. All right, thank you.